Okay, so today we're starting on a pile of rubble, formerly known as a folding, I think they call them director's chair. Something like that. This, in a former life, before it all fell apart, was a director's chair. Okay, just to briefly cover personal protection equipment. I wear gloves, as I've already discussed. I also wear this cloth or paper dust mask when I am doing things like scraping. When I switch to sanding, I wear this kind of face mask with the particle. When I switch to sanding, I wear this kind of mask with the particle filter on. When I do anything with volatile chemicals, like varnishing or painting, I wear the VOC and particulate filter combined. So that covers the basic PPE. I also wear glasses all the time. I wear glasses to see, so when I go in the shop, I just put on shop glasses with a prescription, and so I'm just wearing glasses all the time. Okay, back to work. Okay, so the immediate task is, these are the base of the arm that attaches to the legs. Here's where the legs attach. This is where the arm attaches, here and here. And inside are some very rusty hinges. So what we need to do is we need to remove these hinges, clean these parts up, and then, as you can see, these hinges are just mounted on the surface. They should actually be recessed into the wood. So we may keep these hinges and recess them into the wood, or we may find other nicer hinges and put them on instead. But in the meantime, we got to take this all apart and scrape it all off and clean up these existing hinges and just see what they're like. Okay, so first problem is that the holes on the screws are filled with varnish. So we need to clean those out. You can clean those out with a scraper, or you can use a solvent. I prefer not to use solvents if I don't have to. So we're going to try the scraper first. And that seems to be working pretty good. Yeah. Okay. The other problem is that some of these screws are a little damaged. So we're just going to grab our soft blow hammer and put the screwdriver in there. Give it some gentle taps. Boy. Taps while turning. Wow. Man, that's mangled. There we go. I think. Yeah. There we go. I'll tell you for sure I am replacing all of these flathead screws. I don't care if they're historical. I think they're historical for a reason. They're terrible. Especially these kind. They're really shallow thing that somebody has angled. If you have a hard time getting a screw out, give it some gentle taps while you turn. That will force the screw to come out a lot easier. It's a lot noisier, but it does work. Let's see if we're at a good point yet. Okay. There we go. Hopefully you can see what's going on there. There we go. Yeah, these screws have had their heads sanded off so that their hinges can close. This is bad. Not nice construction. We'll get the proper screws with good old Robertson heads. All right. I'll save you the agony of watching all those screws, but that's how they all come out. Okay, there's not that much disassembly to do, but one joint we have left to undo is this into the arm. It's already broken as well. So we will try and release it gently. There you go. All right, disassembly complete. So I'm not going to use any solvents. We're just going to use a scraper. I'm wearing gloves for two reasons. One, my skin is sensitive to a lot of these woods, like cedar, for example, is very sensitive. And secondly, I have a tremor disorder, and having the tension of nice tight gloves on reduces the tremor considerably. So I'm just going to scrape these components off. I am not going to use any solvent. And as you can see, the scraper does a really good job. Very quickly. Taking it down to bare wood in pretty much one pass. And you sharpen these handled scrapers exactly as you would with a card scraper. And if you have too much contour for these kind of basic scrapers, you can just use card scrapers. Okay, so the main part of this you can just get with the scraper. And if one edge gets dull, you can always just move on to another edge. Okay, so one way to deal with the contour is just to contour your blade over it. The other way is you can get scrapers in all kinds of funky shapes and designs, card scrapers. And if you find one that's the right curve, or close enough, you can get pretty much the whole curve done in just one or two passes. There we go. This is sharpened like a card scraper. It's got a burr on the edge. I've sharpened both edges so I can scrape both directions. Tight spots like in here. And the corner just gets in there and does... Keep forgetting that edge is dull already. Anyway, a little corner, just get in there. The corner and take care of that, no problem. And the round, you just roll it over. Or again, you can use a curved scraper. Whatever works. Now, when it comes to getting the glue out of these holes, you can use all kinds of things, but I think that a gouge of the appropriate curve works really well and pretty quickly. So you just go around the inside, scrape off the chunks. Scrape off the bottom. And you're done. Pretty good. Not perfect, but good enough. Okay, and then the last thing we have to do is take off all the old glue. Also, I just use a scraper for that by and large. Gets rid of it pretty quickly. You just want to get rid of the physical glue that's sticking up and sitting on the surface that would prevent a good join. Okay, now these are all cleaned up. Most of the staining is gone. I think I've got most of the varnish off, or in this case shellac. And yeah, now we'll just go over and give them a sand. I'm going to use 220 grit paper on these Richard contoured blocks. They work pretty good. And I'm just going to give them a light sand, just enough. If you watch as you're sanding, you can see the color change, and that will get rid of any errant fibers pulled up by the scraping, and hopefully we'll get rid of any varnish that I've left anywhere in any contours. And these contoured edges really are great. You can get right in there. Just rotate them around until you get the right part of that curve in there. And there you are. Even these tight curves here. You can get that pointy edge in there. Clean that up nice. You can fire these in a lathe too and clean them up with sandpaper in the lathe. But I find this to be a little therapeutic, if I'm honest. And it feels good to, you feel like you've accomplished something when you get the last of that dirt off. This is a little knob that that the leather back slides over, so it gets tons of abuse, and all the varnishes, or shellac rather, was long worn off of these, so they're just really ingrained dirt. But you can see what a little bit of sanding does. Now initially I'm just going to go over and clean everything up with the sandpaper. And then once that's done with the basic sand, I will come back and look for any areas where there are problems. Whether that needs more card scraper or whether I need to use a stain remover like hydrogen peroxide or something else. And I want to finish all my sanding operations with sanding down the grain rather than across it. Some of these areas are difficult to get with long grain, but you can do it. Just pay attention to the grain of the wood and it'll be all good. End grain doesn't matter which way you sand it, and even this here, this is end grain ultimately. So if it's easier to sand it across than along with end grain, it doesn't matter. And any staining on this bit where it goes in with the glue, that also doesn't matter. So there's a basic sand. There's a couple of problem areas here which I'll have to look at later. But now we're just going to go ahead and sand everything. Okay, once it's all cleaned up, looks pretty good. Now the problem with this crack is, this is a crack where the structure is. The leg goes down in here at an angle, and any force on this is going to be at an angle, or the arm rather, is going to be at an angle through that crack. So I'm going to have to put into that crack some very strong glue. I'm not going to use epoxy, but I will use PVA 3. Okay, all glued up. Now we wait till the glue dries and then we'll scrape off the surface. Then we'll sand this whole component. Meanwhile, we'll get on with scraping the rest of it. Okay, this wood is really badly split. So I'm going to have to repair that. For repairs, I use permanent glue. So I'm going to be using Tight Bond 3. I just open the gap up and fill it up. Let it soak in. Do the entire length of it. Okay, give it a wiggle, work that glue down. If you have a really thin blade, you can use that to work the glue down further, but this gap is big enough that the glue is dripping out the bottom. So we will glue that up, fire that in the clamp. And we just leave that ugly. We just leave that ugly. We don't want to spend a lot of time cleaning up that glue right now because that will just make the glue go into the surface. Once the glue is dry, we'll just be able to scrape that off and we'll have a nice finish ready area.